Cognitive diversity is one of the key concepts around inclusive innovation. Here's my story about cognitive diversity that I presented at the European Summit for Innovation and Education. Apologies about the quality, I did my best.
I am very, very lucky to have the privilege of my position as an academic because it enables me to connect with communities around the world. And it's really an honor for me to get to come to new places, experience new cultures, and work with people from well outside of my original culture, which goes back to the United States, even though I'm an immigrant living here in Oslo. One of my earliest memories of this intercultural experience was a chance that I got to go to Kampala, Uganda, and speak at a conference for entrepreneurship called Power the Next. And the whole point of this conference was to power the next generation of entrepreneurs in Uganda. And so I flew down there with the expectation that I was going to get to go up on the podium and talk about all of my research in areas like universal design and inclusive innovation and things like that. And I'm sitting in the room and I'm looking around myself, and it's predominantly people from Uganda. It's people from the local communities. And me kind of sticking out like a bit of a sore thumb. The person who's speaking now, he's meant to introduce me, and so he gets up into the microphone, and he just has a presence about him that just commands your attention. And so I'm sitting there watching him and listening to the words that he's saying, and he's talking about how important it is for the diaspora, the African diaspora, to reconnect with their roots, to learn more about their culture, to help promote innovation and entrepreneurship at home. And I look around and the audience is really getting wrapped up into every word he's saying, and they're starting to get emotionally moved by all of his words. And it's because everything he's saying sounds like poetry, and so your ears just start to ring with the beauty and the joy of his words. And so I nudge the person next to me and I say, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous because I'm supposed to go speak after this person. Who is this guy? And he says, oh, well, he's a man named Babo. He is the most famous hip-hop artist in Uganda. Now, I'm an academic. I come up in a tradition of people talking in front of chalkboards about very difficult, challenging topics, but in a way that's not nearly as engaging as a famous musician would do it. So I'm sitting there in my chair thinking, okay, I have to somehow pivot this audience into a more academic kind of topic. And I'm kind of biting my nails trying to figure out how to do this. Well, lo and behold, this person was actually only there to introduce the CEO of the event. Now, the CEO gets up on stage, and he starts his presentation saying, I've never told anyone about this before. And he goes into telling his story of his experience as a refugee moving from Uganda to the UK and the trauma that came from that experience. And people are now visibly weeping listening to his story. And my anxiety is just going through the roof because I don't know how. They never trained me in my PhD how to take an audience going from that kind of emotional state into the direction of now we're going to talk about research and innovation about diversity and inclusion. And so I'm just sweating bullets. Fortunately, there was a happy ending because the program coordinator switched up the schedule a little bit, and they put up a panel presentation that I was on. So it was me and some entrepreneurs and innovators from Uganda, and we were talking about different issues related to our work. So the audience got a chance to see me, and we had kind of an emotional break from all that came before. About halfway through the panel presentation, the coordinator nudges me and says, hey, Anthony, maybe you could just wrap up at the end of the panel 10 minutes about your work. No problem. So I get up at the end, I do my 10 minutes, and I leave with the mindset that, well, this was an amazing experience, but I think that I gained more than what I gave. I don't think the audience really got as much out of me being there as I got out of being there, because it was really an enriching experience for me. So I'm walking out of the venue hall, and somebody grabs my shoulder and says, hey, Anthony, I just wanted to tell you how important it was that you were here to provide an international perspective to the work we're trying to do. He said that in Uganda, a lot of the times they look in and they don't spend as much time looking out at the work that's being done outside of the country. And he said that my contribution was valuable in that respect. And it kind of blew my mind because I was ready to write this experience off as being, well, you know, I had a great time and a great, wonderful learning opportunity, but I felt a little bit of guilt not feeling that I gave back as much as I took. And here he kind of validated why I was in that room. Now, I'm telling you this story because it brings forward a really important point, and that is this concept of cognitive diversity. And it's cognitive diversity is basically a premise that our background and experience contributes to a different way of approaching problems and solutions, a different way of innovating than someone who doesn't share those same backgrounds or cultural experiences. And so that was what he was essentially expressing. He was saying, Anthony, your background and your cultural experience is really important for us to hear because it broadens our view of the work that we're doing. So cognitive diversity is one of those key ideas that have been emerging in research lately that has allowed us to move a little bit forward in how we think about diversity and inclusion. And that's just because we can kind of go past some of the more superficial ways of seeing diversity and inclusion and look a little bit more in depth at things that go beyond just visual characteristics of a person's identity and looks more deeply into the ways in which their thinking has been shaped by their experiences. And it's really important when we talk about this that we acknowledge the lived experiences that people with disabilities have, that women have, and certainly that people who hold intersectional identities have. Because those experiences change their perspectives and how they see problems and how we use their perspectives or how we leverage their perspectives to create solutions. So the moral of the story is simply that cognitive diversity can take us from kind of a 2D picture of what diversity and inclusion may look like and add that third dimension and looking at diversity as a more rich experience that an individual brings forward through their ways of thinking.